Hi guys, welcome to lesson 12 of Macbeth. This is the last lesson in Act 1, so hopefully it'll be one that we can kind of get through, and it'll make you feel like you either know quite a bit about Act 1, or it might make you feel you got a few gaps about Act 1, or it might make you feel that you've not got as much of a handle as you want. So it's all about kind of working out where your level is today. We'll go through the lesson, and at the end of it, you'll have an idea of where you're at. So the key things today as we go through it is that as we review Act 1 and go through various bits and pieces of demonstrating your knowledge, that you have two different coloured pens really on your work. One is like your first answer, and then the second pen for your kind of improved answer. So then you can basically see how much you have needed to add to get the right answer, or how little you need to add to get the right answer. Now, obviously, the less you need to add in your second colour, the better that you know Act 1. Okay, so quick review first. Act 1, review of events. So, Scene 1, the three witches appear and open the play. They plan to meet Macbeth after the battle. Scene 2, King Duncan receives news of the battle. Macbeth and Banquo have defeated the enemy, and the Thane of Cawdor is revealed to be a traitor. Scene 3, the witches are making a spell. Macbeth and Banquo walk on stage. The witches tell both men prophecies. Macbeth is told by a messenger he is the new Thane of Cawdor, which of course is one of the things that the witches prophesied. Scene 4, King Duncan announces that Prince Malcolm will be the next king. Macbeth is annoyed at this. Duncan wants to visit Macbeth's castle. Scene 5, Lady Macbeth appears on stage, her first appearance, and she reads a letter from her husband. She feels that Macbeth is not nearly nasty enough to get the crown in the quickest way possible. She appeals to dark forces to give her strength. When Macbeth arrives, Lady Macbeth tells him that they're going to kill King Duncan. Scene 6. King Duncan arrives at Macbeth's castle, and Lady Macbeth welcomes him. Scene 7, the final scene of the act. Macbeth has doubts about murdering King Duncan. He talks to himself and muses over the reasons not to kill the king. Lady Macbeth arrives. Macbeth tells her they are not going to kill King Duncan. She's annoyed with her husband and manipulates him so he changes his mind. Macbeth is determined to murder the king once again. And that's where we got to at the end of the last lesson, with the focus on Lady Macbeth and how she manipulated her husband to come back round to wanting to kill Duncan. So this is where we're going to demonstrate knowledge of Act 1. I'm going to give you a series of questions, and like I said, you're going to answer those questions in one colour, and then you're going to add answers or add more content to those answers in a second colour when I give you the correct answers. So here we are. Act 1, Scene 1, The Witches plan to meet Macbeth. Question 1. Why do you think Shakespeare chooses not to reveal why the witches want to meet Macbeth? Question 2. The witches say fair is foul and foul is fair. What do you think they mean? Question 3. Shakespeare begins the play with the witches. What does this suggest about them? Okay, so 3 questions from the first scene. Pause the video, give yourself some time to answer them, and then when you're ready, move on. Moving on to Act 1, Scene 2. Question 4. Why does Malcolm recognise the captain? Question 5. The captain describes Macbeth's behaviour in the battle. What impression does the audience get of Macbeth? Use a quote to back up your answer. Now, to help you with that one, I have included a little bit of the text here in the yellow box with the red outline around it. So have a look in that little text box there to find a quote to answer question 5. Question 6. Find a quote from this scene to back up each of these statements. Okay. Now, I've not provided you with a clip of this scene on this slide. The whole text is available for you in Google Classroom. So you'll need to go and open that as well, have a look at it. Question 6, Part A. Duncan is impressed with how Macbeth fought in the battle. And question 6, Part B. The captain was harmed in the battle. Now, some versions of the script have the captain as the sergeant, so just be wary of that, because it's one of those, the character names does change depending on which edition of the play we're looking at. So, captain or the sergeant was harmed in the battle is the last question there. Pause the video here. Answer the questions, and when you're ready, you can move on to find out the answers. Okay, answers. So question 1, it creates suspense for the audience. That's why the witches don't reveal why they want to meet Macbeth. Creates a bit of suspense. what's called an enigma code. An enigma code is when the audience don't fully understand why or what's going on, and it gives them a reason to kind of stay engaged with the text to find out the answer. Question 2. Fair is foul and foul is fair. Basically, nothing is really what it seems. If foul is ugly, fair is beautiful. So if beautiful is ugly and ugliness is beautiful, then you can't really trust what anything means anymore. Question 3. They have an important role to play in the play and may influence the events that follow. It's a really important structural element of the whole thing that the witches start the show. If they come on 2 or 3 scenes in, they don't have that same kind of power over the whole play. So having them start gives them that kind of influence that suggests that they might have got a hand and a control over everything that follows their performance. Over to question 4. Captain fought to protect Malcolm in the battles. That's how Malcolm recognises him. Question 5. Well, you went to pick a quote. So the question was, Captain describes Macbeth's behaviour in the battle, and what impressions did it get from Macbeth? Well, hopefully you said that the impression is that Macbeth is brave, or an excellent warrior, or kind of very determined. Anything like that was the kind of what impression we get of Macbeth. So you've got things like brave Macbeth, that just tells how courageous he is. Disdaining fortune means he doesn't care if he lives or dies. Like valor's minion suggests that he's fighting for bravery. You could have also possibly said how violent he is, unseamed him from the nave to the chops, which means he's kind of hacked his enemy into 2 pieces. So yeah, quite a violent man, a brave warrior, determined to kind of fight for Scotland. Those are the kind of things, and those are the quotes that hopefully you picked out. Question 6, part A. Duncan is impressed with how Macbeth has fought in the battle. Well, the answer to that one is, "Oh, valiant cousin, worthy gentleman." And obviously, lots of dramatic irony there. And the captain was harmed in the battle. Well, he tells us, "I am faint, my gashes cry for help." So if you needed to add any answers to those questions, you can do so now. Pause the video here, improve what you've written, and then when you're ready, you can move on to the next bit. Right, Act 1, Scene 3. This is the witches, the kind of the big scene, one of the highlights of the show, where they meet Macbeth for the first time. Question 1. What do the witches do to the sailor? You remember at the beginning of this scene, they're casting a spell because they're annoyed at a sailor's wife who didn't share chestnuts with one of the witches, and they decide to punish the wife by punishing the sailor. So, what do they do to him? Question 2. Macbeth's first words of the play are, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." Why are these words significant, and what do they suggest about Macbeth? Hopefully those words, those keywords foul and fair, remind you of maybe a slightly earlier speech that we've just looked at. What about them though? Why are they significant, and what does it suggest about Macbeth? Question 3. Put the events in the order by numbering the boxes. The first one's been done for you. So we've got a whole series of events here, and you've got to put the right order together. So number 1 has already been identified for you. So the first one on the list is Macbeth orders the witches to give him more information. The one that's been done for you is Banquo questions the witches' physical appearance. That's when they first appear on stage. Then number 3 is, or the third one in the list, not the third one necessarily in order, the witches disappear, leaving Banquo and Macbeth confused. Then the witches call Macbeth a Thane of Cawdor and say he will be king. That's the prophecy. And finally, Banquo asks the witches to predict his future. So 5 steps there. Probably the easiest way to do it is to work out what the last one is of those 5, and then work out the ones in between the first and the last one. Pause here if you want to pause while you get that done, and when you're ready, you can move on to question 4. Question 4, read from line 50 to line 87. Now again, you need to go into the accompanying document which has got the script in it, and have a look at that bit. It says, the question is, how does Macbeth and Banquo react to the witch's predictions? So 2 different men in the question. What are their reactions to the predictions like? Okay. Again, check the part of the script those 37 lines or so. Question 5. Ross tells Macbeth that he is to become the Thane of Cawdor. Describe the effect it has on the following things. So how does this news affect the way Macbeth feels about the witch's prophecies, part A, and affect Macbeth's character, part B? So have a think about your answers here. Pause the video while you get your answers down. Read a bit of the script that you need to read, and when you're ready, press play and you'll see the answers on the next slide. So, what do the witches do to the sailor? They create a storm to disturb his sleep. Question 2. The first words of the play so foul, Macbeth's first words of the play should say, are so foul and fair a day I've not seen. And while important, what they suggest? Well, they echo the last lines of the first scene, which is what the witches say. And this reminds the audience that appearances can be deceiving and that Macbeth may not be what he seems to be either. He certainly does change his character as the play moves forward. Question 3. The events in the right order. So it should be the first one was Banquo questions the witch's physical appearance. Number 2, the witches call Macbeth the Thane of Cawdor and say he will be king. Number 3, Banquo asks the witches to predict his future. Number 4, Macbeth orders the witches to give him more information. And number 5, the witches disappear, leaving Banquo and Macbeth confused. Question 4, reading from lines 50 to 87. How do Macbeth and Banquo react to the witches' predictions? Well, Macbeth isn't sure whether to believe them at first and wants more information. Banquo, on the other hand, he's suspicious of the witches' motives. He thinks that they might be up to no good, there might be evil going on here, and he's intrigued to know more about his future. Question 5. Ross arrives, tells Macbeth he's the new Thane of Cawdor. What's the effect on Macbeth? So, Macbeth feels that the witches' prophecies, he starts to trust the prophecies more as he knows 2 of them are true. So he knows that they were telling the truth about him being the Thane of Glamis, and now it's turned out to be true that he's the Thane of Cawdor. And 5b, his character, how's it change his character? Well, he becomes obsessed with the thought of becoming king. He can't stop thinking about his future. If you remember in the scene, he kind of steps off to one side and starts talking to himself while Banquo and Ross and whoever else has come on stage have a little chat kind of in the background. Add your 2 answers here with what I've given you with a different colour pen so you can see what you've learnt and what you've developed. And when you're ready, you can move on to the next section. So this is now Act 1, Scene 4. Question 1. Read the paragraph below and fill the gaps using words from the box. I would give you insight here. There's only 4 words that need to there are only 4 words that need to be added, and as you can see, there's 8 words to choose from. So choose carefully because not all of these words are needed. So here's what it says. In the scene, Duncan praises Macbeth and Banquo for their help in the battle and addresses Macbeth as the Thane of something. Duncan names his eldest son, whoever he is, heir to the throne, and Macbeth realizes he'll need to something this person before he can become king. Macbeth's something seems to be taking control of him. So choose carefully from the words in the box there. Question 2. Duncan uses a metaphor in this scene when talking about Macbeth's future. Find a quote which uses this metaphor and explain what it suggests. So you're going to go to Act 1, Scene 4. Find the quote that Duncan says, the metaphorical bit of language Duncan uses to describe Macbeth's future. And then put the quote and explain what it suggests about Macbeth's situation. Act 1, Scene 5. Lady Macbeth now. And she's on stage by herself. Question 3. Explain the impression that the audience gets of Lady Macbeth in this scene. Okay. Now remember, there's 2 parts to this scene. There's a bit where she's on stage by herself, and there's a bit where she's on stage with her husband. And it might be that you want to address both those different parts of the scene in your answer, or you may find that you just want to write about one or the other. I would suggest writing a bit about both would be my preferred option there. Question 4. What does Lady Macbeth mean in each of the following quotes? So she says, thy nature is too full of the milk of human kindness. So that might have a literal meaning, and it might have a metaphorical meaning. So you can put down whichever one you think. And then B, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. What does she mean by that? Okay, pause the video here while you work out your answers, and when you're ready, press play and check your answers on the next slide. So here we are, answers. First of all, the fill in the missing words question. In the scene, Duncan praises Macbeth and Banquo for their help in the battle, and he addresses Macbeth as the Thane of Cawdor. Duncan names his eldest son Malcolm, heir of the throne, and Macbeth realizes that he will need to defeat this person before he can become king. Macbeth's ambition seems to have taken control of him. So the words that you should have picked out are Malcolm, ambition, Cawdor, and defeat. Okay, I'll actually put them in the right places. Question 2. The quote was, I have begun to plant thee and will labour to make thee full of growing. And what that suggests is that Duncan wants to nurture Macbeth and has long-term plans for him. Okay? So it suggests that Duncan sees a future for Macbeth, that he wants to work with him and improve him. Into Act 1, Scene 5. Question 3, what impression does the audience get of Lady Macbeth in the scene? Well, you could have said something like this, and hopefully you did. She seems ruthless because she plans to kill Duncan so her husband can become king. She seems manipulative when she persuades Macbeth to kill Duncan. So those are the two sides of this scene summed up in one complex sentence there. First half is her by herself, seeming so evil and ruthless and heartless. The second part of the scene where she starts to manipulate her husband into doing what she wants him to do. Into the quotes for question 4. What does she mean by each of the following quotes? So, thy nature is too full of milk of human kindness. Basically, what that means is Macbeth, in her opinion, is too kind to kill King Duncan. And B, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. And that means that Macbeth needs to appear innocent to Duncan, so his intentions to kill are hidden. Again, bringing that theme of appearances can be deceiving. It started way back in scene 1 with foul is fair and fair is foul, or fair is foul and foul is fair. You know what I mean. That quote at the end of scene 1, and that sets up the theme of appearances being deceiving. And here it comes back again. Move on now into the final set of questions. So, Act 1, Scene 6. Just one question here. How does Shakespeare suggest that Duncan feels welcome in Macbeth's castle? Use a quote to support your answer. So, go to the text and find the bit at the beginning of Act 1, Scene 6, where Duncan and Banquo, but you're mainly looking at Duncan here, how Duncan feels welcome. What does Duncan say about the castle, basically, that makes it seem like he's happy to be there? Act 1, Scene 7, the Macbeths agree to kill Duncan. So question 2 here, read Macbeth's speech from line 1 to 27. Decide whether each statement is true or false, and find a quote. So, you get the script in front of you, and the first statement is following. Macbeth worries about the consequences of committing murder. So, decide in your own mind whether you think that's true or false. And if you think it's true or false, then find a quote that proves your opinion. Okay, so you're going to find a quote that either backs it up or shows that it's a lie. B, Macbeth recognises that he should be protecting Duncan. So again, check the speech and whether you think that's true or false, and then find a quote that supports your opinion. And finally, C, Macbeth only wants to kill Duncan out of jealousy. So decide whether you think that's true or false, and then find a quote that supports your opinion. And the last question, in your own words, explain how Lady Macbeth convinces Macbeth to kill Duncan. So a little summary there of how Lady Macbeth manipulates her husband at the end of Act 1, Scene 7. Right, pause here while you answer your questions, and when you're ready, you can move on to get the answers. Here we are, answer time. Duncan, first of all, how does Duncan feel when he comes to the castle? Well, he feels positive about it. He says has a pleasant seat, and he's pleased to see Lady Macbeth and calls her our honoured hostess. So we talked about, when we read that scene, about how much dramatic irony goes on in that little short scene, and some of those comments and quotes that we put in the answer there would be some of the dramatic irony quotes. Act 1, Scene 7 quickly. Question 2. So, Macbeth worries about the consequences of committing murder. That is true. He does, and he says to himself, we but teach bloody instructions, which being taught return to plague the inventor. And that's basically a way of saying what goes around comes around. So if I kill someone, then someone's probably going to try and kill me. If I kill Duncan, someone else is going to try and kill me. So basically he's aware of setting himself up to be a target of violence. Question B, or point B, Macbeth recognises that he should be protecting Duncan. That's also true. Who should, against his murderer, shut the door, not bear the knife myself? Here he's talking about the role of being the host. And as the host, you should be looking after your guest. As he says, not trying to kill him. And C, Macbeth only wants to kill Duncan out of jealousy. Well, that one's false. There's no jealousy really in this play. It's all about ambition. And that's what Macbeth says. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition. And remember that was the horse riding image that we looked at a few lessons ago, where Macbeth is basically saying that he hasn't got the speed to make his horse fast enough to jump the hedge safely, and instead it's going to throw him, and he's the one that's going to get hurt as he crashes down on the other side. Finally, a little summary of Lady Macbeth's methods of how she convinces Macbeth to kill Duncan. And she uses persuasive language. She questions Macbeth's courage and masculinity. And she makes the murder seem simple by coming up with a clear plan. As long as you've got words to that effect, it doesn't really matter what order you put them in, as long as you've got those kind of three key areas. So persuasive language, challenging his courage and masculinity, or kind of manipulating him with those things, and then making the murder seem incredibly easy and straightforward. So guys, well done for getting through that review of Act 1. We've been through the whole of that act now. You demonstrated what you know and what you didn't know, and hopefully you've got an idea of how confident you should be feeling about this play at this point in time. In terms of what I want you to see from your work today, can you please upload either a picture of the work you've done or your own www and EBI for this lesson. Okay, so you've got a choice. You can upload your work, or you can put in the private comments your own www and your own EBI. Okay, take care, folks, and I shall see you soon.